Hey folks, welcome to Inside EPL, our first live video looking at the preview for this weekend's fixtures. A little bit later than we would have liked to have done it, but it's been a mad week. Rowan, how are you, pal?
I'm very well. How are you? How was your week? Weekend started.
Oh,
You were at the Horsies yesterday.
I was at the Dublin Horse Show yesterday in the RDS, thanks to my partner. So yeah, it was nice. Good day out actually. Yeah, not bad. And then just crazy with work, mad busy. So
yeah.
Well, go
on. So yesterday I was went to the pub to watch the match with a couple of the boys that you know, to catch the season opener with City and Burnley, and it was a good game. I think Fanto players, the land over, are going to be very happy with Mr. Haaland's performance anyway. You didn't captain him either, did you?
No.
Yeah, me neither. I have him in the team. I think 86% of Fanto players captained Mr. Haaland yesterday. So
I will pray for a Cody Gakpo hat-trick against Chelsea, which won't happen.
Did you go Gakpo?
By accident. I forgot to assign a captain this week already for week 1.
Yeah. No, I went with Rasher with no starting striker for United. Rasher in a little bit of form, did well in his last game. And playing against a depleted Wolves side, I thought Rasher might be able to step up and work some magic. So fingers crossed, I'm gonna have to wait till Monday for that decision to either have worked out really well or quite badly. So we'll see.
I think you might do okay. We're going to have a quick chat about the Man City game last night. Very quick chat. And then we're going to try and get into the preview because the Arsenal game will be kicking off actually while we're doing this. So season did open. Erling Haaland did what Erling Haaland does at the start of a season. He opens with a brace. Rodri with the other goal. I think it was Rodri with the other goal. Nothing surprising in that performance at all, was there, Rowan?
No, I mean, it was pretty standard fare from City. To be fair to Burnley, They played the kind of football they did that got them into the league in the first place, quite open, quite expansive. They carved out some chances, and to be honest, they could have and probably should have got at least one goal. They did get some good chances opened up, but they just didn't have the finishing power, I suppose, up front to get that goal. But Haaland scored a great tap in. They had 3 defenders sitting on the 6-yard box, ball watching. I mean, it was like looking at those, what are those meerkats that just kind of look at everything. It was just like 3 meerkats standing on the 6-yard box, just looking at the ball with Haaland just stood on the penalty spot, completely unmarked. And he just taps it in for a pretty easy goal. I think it was on the 3-minute, 50-second mark. So basically 4-minute mark. And then a beautiful, I don't know whether it was a volley or a half volley or whether he took a touch, but on the edge of the box and he smashed it into the top corner. And I mean, the whole bar just looked at each other going, it was, I mean, goal of the month contender.
Didn't even look up. Didn't even look.
No.
Well, as the old saying goes, the goal doesn't move. So if you know where the goal is, you know where the goal is. But the fact that it was in such a tight space and the ball was just flicked and it's the venom at which he hits the ball at as well.
It was just the killer instinct. You just look at it and you have to applaud, which pains me to do. But it was a great goal, and Haaland does what Haaland does, which is bang 2 in and, gets his account off for the season. So, I mean, hitting in that 30 mark, I think, is going to be pretty nailed on again this season. Rodri getting a nice third towards the end of the game on the 75th minute, a decent finish, just to kind of kill the game off and stop Burnley having any chance of really getting back into it. And a red card for Zaroury for Burnley at the end. It was a deserved red card, but a tackle a little high, about 6 or 7 inches above the ankle. And it wasn't on purpose. A little bit reckless. I don't think it hurt as much as it could have, but still a little bit dangerous. So Burnley finished the match with 10 men. But yeah, a little bit of funny stuff at halftime. I think Guardiola was screaming and roaring at Haaland for one reason or another. The reasons why are still a little bit unclear, but a little bit of the look at me show from Guardiola. I think at halftime, he certainly could have waited till they were in the dressing room to say what he said. And then he was kind of pushing the camera out of the way because he was clearly interested in what they were saying. And he was kind of acting as if this was some sort of intrusion, despite the fact that he's screaming and roaring at the best striker in the world, 2-0 up, having scored 2 goals near the center circle of the pitch, which was quite curious. So little bit of the look at me's from Pep Guardiola, but a pretty easy night for Man City overall.
Yeah, it tells a bit about a character as well, considering how public it was. You know, that kind of stuff could wait the extra couple of seconds until you get into the dressing room and deal with it there. You know, do you have to really have that conversation in the middle of the park? You know, and if you look at Haaland's reaction to it, he's not impressed. He's not even looking at Pep. He's just walking off the park. He's ignoring the situation pretty much. So, if I was Pep, I'd be careful on that one because Haaland, you know,
we've seen Pep do this before, like kind of advising players when they've come off the pitch and, you know, looking like the intense professor that he is, trying to impart knowledge to these players. But he's done it before, but not to Haaland, not in the center circle, and not at halftime. So it was
the very first game of the season. You're already winning comfortably going in at halftime. Like, you know, probably doesn't need it.
Yeah, maybe it's kind of like, even though we've won the treble, I'm still as intense as ever. It seemed a little bit showy-offy, to be honest. It was a tad unnecessary. I think he was trying to prove a point, and then, you know, amazed that the camera was there and he's pushing it out of the way. It all looked a little bit false. It was a bit cringy, to be honest. But listen, he's not going to care. 3-0, job done.
He's not going to care. He's a big enough name himself to be able to handle that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that's the Man City stuff. As I said, in future we'll do these earlier in the week so that they're up and out and everything else. But we do have a raft of fixtures that we're going to I'll share them. I'll put them up here on the screen. We'll have a quick chat about this as well. It's an action-packed day of football in the Premier League this week. So we start off Arsenal Nottingham Forest going into this game. Rowan, thoughts on this?
I think it's going to be a comfortable 2 or 3-0 win. I think quite an attacking team. We spoke about this in one of our episodes pre-season. Might have been in episode 2. We were chatting about Arsenal's kind of formations. Partey is starting at right back, unbelievably. So, quite believable when you think about it. I imagine doing what Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to be doing for Liverpool. This is the classic 3-2-2-3 formation, the box midfield, which is going to be kind of playing with his 2 banks of 5, playing in those kind of vertical columns when kind of out of possession, sometimes in possession. But it's going to be 3-2-2-3 with Partey coming in off the right, joining Declan Rice at the bottom of that box midfield. Gabriel dropped, so a lot of fantasy football people quite annoyed at that. Saliba back in the fray. Ramsdale starts. Obviously, that goalkeeping situation hasn't quite been sorted out. But it looks like it's going to be a 3-2-2-3 from Arsenal, and predicting this is going to be a pretty easy day for them. 2-3-0 is my prediction.
No Jesus in the lineup at all in the squad, so obviously there's an injury there or something going on with him there as well. And Nketiah starts. We had this conversation. We've had it a lot over the episodes that we've done on the channel.
Yeah,
Arsenal desperately, for me, need to have a top class number 9. And now they go into the first game of the season where they want to try and close the gap on Manchester City with Eddie and Nketiah starting up front. So that's going to be an interchange between him and Kai Havertz. But again, then you get a player who's not a number 9 playing as number 9 again, as he did at Chelsea. Isn't ideal for Arsenal. He should have enough to beat Nottingham Forest in this game. But there's a couple of bits in there. That Arsenal team is still not settled. Still not what they would want it to be when they want to have a run at this.
Yeah, true. And to be honest, I thought that maybe Havertz would have been playing in that false 9 position. A lot of Arsenal fans were expecting Havertz to be playing in that kind of striker role, especially in the absence of Gabriel Jesus. But he's brought Nketiah in. I thought Nketiah may have been dropped. Havertz moved up. Someone else taking the right back position, and then Partey being moved directly into that middle 3. But it seems that he has faith in Nketiah, wants to put Havertz in that midfield, which is probably a sign of things to come. Havertz probably taking up that number 8 position and kind of making that his own and not really kind of bothering with that striker position, because once Jesus comes back, that's going to be his. So I think he's putting Havertz where he expects Havertz to be for the rest of the season. And interesting one with Partey starting at right back, but it does make sense given that Nketiah is on the pitch. So I think there's going to be a lot of goals today. There's an awful lot of attacking intent from Arsenal. I think Forest are going to have a tough day.
It's a big game for Eddie Nketiah. He's been looking for that striking role. He's been looking for the opportunity to play in an attacking role for Arsenal. He's got it now today. So he's a real opportunity to put a marker down for his campaign this season as well. So
For sure, he did. He did take his chance when he got it last year. He was banging in a couple of goals, scored a brace. I think he may have even got a hat trick in one game. And he was looking like, all right, this kid could step up to the mantle and take over. But his form fell off a cliff. He started missing chances. This is when Arsenal started going on a bit of a losing run, or at least not winning games towards the end of the season. He wasn't taking chances that he really should have. So I think it's a case of needs must. Hopefully Nketiah can bang in some goals and kind of give Arteta some selection problems, some headaches. But I think it's going to be business as usual once Jesus comes back and Nketiah is going to find himself on that bench. But let's see what he does today. There could be some goals in him. Yeah,
Forest have gone with a strange looking lineup as well. We all thought we'd see the attacking three, Brennan Johnson on one side. We'd see Chris Wood in the number 9. Then the other player they'd signed for the left-hand side who doesn't appear to be in their squad at all today either. They also have Awoniyi. I can never say his name.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. They also have him. He's on the bench as well. Lewis O'Brien back from Malone at DC United goes in on the bench as well for today. He's a good midfielder, but it's not a cracking look in Nottingham Forest side. It's not much stronger than they had last season by the looks of things. Maybe they've settled a bit more. Maybe they're gelled a bit better, but it's a 5 at the back for them. Interesting to see how they get off and how Steve Cooper gets on with his with his side for this season. So
I was surprised to see Chris Wood on the bench. I thought he'd start. It seems that he just wants to come away from here with a point. Have Brennan Johnson playing through the middle, probably just looking for some breakaways, some quick through balls, some counter-attacking stuff, as opposed to having a more languid and slow Chris Wood up top. However, he'd be a little bit better for those odd set pieces that they might get, maybe try and steal a goal, but it looks like this is going to be a damage limitation day for Forest. They want to try and probably get away from here with a point and have Brennan Johnson just hugging that halfway line and trying to get a breakaway and seeing if he can steal a goal. But it looks like that's the tactics for the day. But it's still 0-0. We're 3 minutes in, so far so good.
So far so good for them. Give the prediction, Ron. How do you think the game is going to go? Give us a score.
I think it's going to be a tidy 2-0. I think it's going to be business as usual. I don't think it's going to be much of a hardship for them, but 2-0 is my prediction. What about you?
3, maybe 3-0. Same reasons.
I was flirting between the two of them, but I think 2 or 3-0 is a pretty safe bet for sure.
Yeah, I think they've got enough. Moving on to Bournemouth and West Ham. Bournemouth at home. Andoni Iraola takes his team for the very first game of the season. Some good signings. Nicked Max Aarons off Leeds at the medical stage during the week. Not impressed with that one, but he did what he did. Good, very good Premier League level right back in Max Aarons. I think he's a cracking player, and Bournemouth have a really good fullback there. Iraola is slowly putting together a very tasty looking side there. I think if we can go into this and look at what he's got in terms of his squads, they've really started to add some bits and update this. Yeah, Max Aarons is in there as well. He went to their midfield as well.
Yeah.
They got Jack Rothwell. Joe Rothwell is in there as well. The decent looking, they're definitely a bit better than they were last year. They play a much more attacking style of play. Justin Kluivert could make a debut today as well, which would be a good attacking option for them. Well, I've gambled on him in my fantasy league team. I think he might actually hit the ground running. West Ham still haven't got players in that they're trying to get in, but they're moving now. They've started to get something moving. A lot of players linked with them at the moment. They've obviously had the bid accepted by Manchester United for Maguire.
Pretty much. I don't know if it's signed paperwork, but I mean it's as good as done. I think it's James Ward-Prowse and Harry Maguire. I think that's probably the end of McTominay's links to West Ham after Ward-Prowse has been signed. But you never know. But it looks like that was the kind of the main midfield option that they wanted. I really thought Moyes wanted McTominay ahead of James Ward-Prowse. They are slightly different players, but both have an eye for goal. Both do have attacking intent. I mean, we certainly see that from McTominay with Scotland and Ward-Prowse, the set piece specialist that everyone knows him to be. But both would be good additions, and it looks like they've got James Ward-Prowse. So what that means for McTominay, I don't know. But Maguire should be in there soon. But for now, it's Kurt Zouma again beside Agard. But I think Maguire's going to be taking that spot pretty soon.
Yeah, I'd imagine so as well. They need some firepower as well, West Ham, and they're looking at it, but they need some firepower pretty quickly with Scamacca moving away from the club, and they haven't got a replacement in just yet. So still work to be done there.
What are your thoughts on, I mean, Solanke is injured, he's not starting, but what do you think is going to happen with Bournemouth, with Kluivert and Solanke? Because, I mean, are they going to play 2 up top? Is Solanke
I think
reverted? What do you think?
I think you'll see Cliver move out to the wide area. I think they'll
Yeah.
play with an attacking three, maybe, or a deep lying three. I think it'll be a 5 in midfield when they don't have the ball, and the 4-3-3 when they do have the ball, and Cliver will join in at the attacks there as well. They've got options. He can play through the middle, but he has predominantly played as an outside forward, or an inverted winger nearly coming in. So not his dad, very different kind of player to his dad, but still has a decent pedigree behind him as well. So I think he'll do okay there. I think the early days in the Premier League are when he's probably going to make his name, because I think that's when people won't really know 100% what to expect from him in the Premier League. And I fully expect this to be a very attacking, free-flowing Bournemouth side. It might take a couple of weeks for Areola's stuff to bed in a bit, but I think they'll do fine. And funny enough, I think West Ham will be okay this year as well. I think they'll be much more comfortable than they were last year. They've obviously got a huge amount of money burning holes in their pocket that they need to do something
and
with
Paqueta's on the injury table as well. So I think they could be looking for a 60 or 70 million windfall. What do you make of that? I mean, that's a lot of money for a player I think has done the square root of very little last year. He was okay at West Ham, but 60, 70 million.
I agree. I think he has been okay. I completely agree with you. I think he's just about being okay. I think if you can get 67 million for him, the issue West Ham are going to have, and we've talked about this again before, is if a situation where they'll have money from Declan Rice, but they need a CDM. They have money from Paqueta, but they need an attacking midfielder.
Yeah.
And everybody now knows they have that money and that they need these players, so they can demand whatever fee they want, and they can increase the value, or unnaturally inflate the value of the player that they're trying to sign just on the back of that. So you've got that. So it's a tricky situation for West Ham. I think they'll be looking to the foreign market probably to get better deals. I think that the local market will not be
avoid that English tax as well. Yeah.
I want an English player, add on 20 million.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the case. I think that's why United had the neck to be looking for close to 50 million for McTominay. To be fair to McTominay, I do think he's a 35 to 40 million pound player. I do think that is, and that's not just rose tinted glasses. From my side, I think when you look at what some players are going for, I think McTominay is easily in that 35 to 40 million bracket. But had West Ham not had that kind of a cash injection, would United have accepted something closer to 30 like they did with Maguire? Who knows? Certainly McTominay is not on the same wages, but we can talk about United anyway a little bit later on, because they've got their game with Wolves on Monday, but we'll touch on that a little bit later on.
Yeah, let's move on then. Let's talk about Brighton and Luton. So De Zerbi's second season, will he have a bit of second season syndrome going into this campaign?
You're curious about that. You're kind of 50-50 about that, aren't you?
I am, because as I've said before, he does play a variation of Bielsa ball, which again, we've also talked about the fact that he's a fan of Marcelo Bielsa as well. The difference being Bielsa plays a very strong man-marking system, which ultimately ended up being the undoing of his system, was how easy it was at times to get past the man-marking. Unless you've got really good players, you can't do it. Top clubs around the world can do it because they've got the best players one-on-one. When you don't have the best players, it can break down. De Zerbi doesn't play that system, so he plays the attacking side of it, but not the man-marking defensive side of it. So he's avoided that kind of hamstring. The issue will be for him, the analytics teams from all the other clubs will have now gotten into his team this year, and will have plenty of data to get into and figure out how they play, how they start games, how do we stop their attacks, how do we press them from the front, how do we minimize their impact. So they've got all of that kind of stuff this year that they didn't have as much of. They would have a little bit, but the data set from an analytics point of view for this season is much greater than before. So it'll be interesting to see what he does there. Luton is the one for me that I'm really curious about. You're very nervous about Mrs. Murphy's windows getting smashed, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Poor old Mrs. Murphy. Sitting beside the ground, I think Luton are going to get absolutely torn apart this season. I think it's going to be quite ugly. I think a lot of people are expecting this to be a Derby-esque type performance from Luton throughout the season. I hope it isn't for their sake, because I would like them to actually enjoy their time in the top league, but I think it's going to be a pretty rough ride for them. But there are other poor enough teams in the league that I think they can steal some points off, but not enough for them to get 40 points and keep them up for the season. So I think this is going to be. I think Brighton are going to absolutely tear them apart today, if I'm totally honest. Even in the face of all this Caicedo stuff going on. What do you make of that? The Liverpool breaking the British transfer record and Caicedo going, nah, you're all right.
Nah. And the funny thing about this is, and again, we're speculating because you're reading reports from different places, and No one ever really knows what the exact truth is. But the interesting part was Liverpool have Lavia done and dusted. Appears to be done and dusted. And then Chelsea decide to do what they did with Arsenal last year at Mudryk and go, actually, we fancy a go. But now that you've done all the work on it, you've agreed a fee. We know what the fee is. We'll just come in and match that fee and go after more wages. And then Liverpool have gone, oh, well, if you want to play that game, we can play that game too. See that fee you've got agreed for Caicedo? We're going to go in and go ahead of that. We're going to bid higher than that and get that player done. The reports that I saw suggested that Jurgen Klopp had a conversation with Caicedo. Caicedo was very keen on it. And apparently Alexis McAllister was also involved in the conversation as well because he would have played with Caicedo.
Undoubtedly, yeah.
And he thought, this is done then, surely. And he says, no, he doesn't want to go there in the end. So I thought it was an unusual. There's a lot of weird stuff going on the transfer market.
Yeah, I'd love to join you. And then a day later, nah, not really into it today. It's like,
yeah.
What's going on? Maybe listen. Would you prefer to live in Liverpool or London? Obviously London. Would I want to work under Pochettino or Klopp? I mean, I'd love to work under either of them, to be honest. Yeah. So I think there's more of a chance of silverware with Liverpool in the short term. There could be a better chance of silverware in the long term with Pochettino because I think Liverpool are going to have a lot of changes to make in terms of Salah, Van Dijk. In the next kind of 1 to 2 years, I think that becomes an issue for them. And they're huge heavyweight players for Liverpool, whereas Chelsea seem to have a very young, raw sapling of a team that's being taken over with a manager who is exceptionally good with youth and bringing them through and kind of getting teams to run their arse off. And you need young players to do that. So who knows? It's a really nice position for Caicedo to be in. It's a great set of choices. To go from 4.5 million in 2001 to 115 million in 2023, that's popcorn inflation prices. So it's I think that's an insane increase. I think everyone's scratching their heads at that. I think it's absolutely bananas. But if they get him for 5 to 10 years, and they might have a resale value there, it mightn't be a bad bit of business. Seeing as they got 60 million for Fabinho and Henderson. So let's see.
Yeah, they've got some money as well. They haven't really broken their own. Outside of the money they brought in, they haven't really broken anything else. So,
we didn't do a score prediction for Bournemouth and West Ham.
We didn't. So, Bournemouth West Ham, what have you got?
I think that's going to be 1-0 West Ham.
Oh, away win. I'm going for a 1-1 draw. I think they'll cancel each other out.
Again, not a bad shout. I was actually going to go for a 0-0 draw. I think it's going to be a very low chance game, but I think West Ham might be able to sneak one. But I think both would be happy with a draw. I think both of them want to get through game week 1, not on 0. So I think a draw would suit both sides, but I think West Ham might be able to nick it.
Just on Luton real quick before we get the score prediction for Brighton and Luton. Ross Barkley came in during the week from Nice.
Yes.
And has signed. Welcome back to the Premier League, Ross Barkley.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, I think it's exactly the kind of it's the €2-3 DVD bin that Luton have to be shopping in, to be honest. Ross Barkley never really cut it in the Premiership. A lot of noise about him before this new crop of English players came through and basically just cast him to the side. Listen, he'll bring in some Premiership experience. I think there'll be some players in that Luton team that will look up to Ross Barkley. Great experience. He seemed to do middling things in France. But I think Luton just don't want to put themselves into any trouble for when they inevitably go down. So I think let's bring someone in with some Premiership experience, might be able to teach the young lads some stuff, but I don't think it's going to make much of a difference to their chances of survival in this campaign.
Well, that being said then, score prediction.
3-0 Brighton.
Yeah. Yep. I'm the exact same as you. I'm writing them down.
Yeah, they got Mahmoud Dahoud playing in the bottom two with Pascal Gross, who's obviously standing in for Moises Caicedo while he's waiting for that. I think that obviously the teams haven't been released. I didn't see Danny Welbeck in the possible 11 or on the injury bench, so I don't know whether he's on the subs bench. And Evan Ferguson is going to start, which I'm surprised at because Danny Welbeck kind of made that position his own when he was injury-free last year. But Evan Ferguson might start. Who knows? I hope he does. As an Irishman, I want to see that guy get at least 20, 25 games under his belt and just as many starts. But yeah, 3-0, I think it's going to be goals galore. And I hope so, because I've got two of those boys in my Fanto team. So let's see what happens.
Let's go, Matoma.
That's it.
I'm banking on it. I picked him over Rashford.
Yeah, you insane man. Try and have both of them in there, but listen.
I put all my money into the midfield. I put all my money in the midfield, and that's Haaland to tick a box because everyone else has Haaland, so I have to have him. And all the money went into the midfield for goals. So we'll see if it works out this season.
See what happens.
Moving on then, Everton versus Fulham. Everton, Danjuma has come in. They brought in a couple of people on the cheap. Not huge money being spent by Everton this summer. They're playing Fulham, who have their own set of issues. Obviously, Marco Silva, who refused to go to Saudi Arabia. So huge pat on the back for him for doing that and sticking to his guns and the project that he's building at Fulham. Alexander Mitrovic, Silva said last week, he is fit, he is available, and he will play or could play in this game. Do you see him playing?
I don't know. The possible lineup has Jimenez up front. I mean, is Jimenez fit? I think he is. But I really don't know. It's a coin toss. If I was Silva, I'd be like, yeah, you're playing and bang in some goals for us, please. Without him, I think they're in real trouble. Vinicius, I think it's going to be a big season for him. I think he did reasonably well when he had to step in during Mitrovic's suspension last year. I think he's a decent enough player. I think there's going to be a huge weight of responsibility on his shoulders this year to start banging in goals, particularly with Jimenez being kind of out of sorts for the last couple of years. So we'll see how things go there. I would start Mitrovic if he was fit. Whether that happens, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes in terms of transfers, whether he's still kicking up a stink, whether there's a transfer close. They might need a nice cash injection and they just want to keep him fit. To be honest, I haven't a clue. But if he's fit, I would be playing him.
Yeah, he's not listed in the potential lineup or again, not injured.
I don't think he is. I think Raul Jimenez is going to be starting this game. I don't think Mitrovic is going to be anywhere near this game. But that looks like he's probably going to be on the move somewhere. He did kick up a ferocious stink, which I thought was outrageously unprofessional from a player that I think endeared himself to fans across the land last year with his goal scoring ability. But I thought his behavior was quite poor. You know, you signed a contract, you were in the Championship a year ago, you came up, had a breakout season with Fulham, did wonderful things, completely exceeded expectations. It's a really good marriage. And as soon as big bags of money are shown, there's nothing wrong with showing interest. There's nothing wrong in maybe wanting to leave, but being so public about it and shouting and screaming and stomping your feet that you're never going to play for the club again. Honestly, I thought was very, very unprofessional. I thought it was very disappointing behavior from him. And I hope it doesn't set a precedent for other players within that club or within the league as a whole, to be honest.
It's definitely done it within England, and we'll get to that in a second when we talk about Everton and potential signings that they're looking at. But if you look at injury-wise as well, there's not a huge amount of worries for Fulham today. Tom Kearney, probably a lot of people said he's going to leave this summer anyway, but Tom Kearney's out injured. Joe Polino's down having a slight shoulder injury, but again, not confirmed if he'd missed the game. And then from an Everton perspective, Danjuma, who I just mentioned, is actually down as having a knock and may miss the game, but not confirmed. Eddie Ali's got a groin injury. Damari Gray's got a muscle issue. Dwight McNeil has a knock. Again, it's only a knock, so could play. And then Seamus Coleman is a leg injury.
So a lot of big players missing for both teams, actually. I mean, Andreas Pereira and Paulinho missing for Fulham. I think that's going to be huge. So without Mitrovic, Pereira and Paulinho, who were probably their three best players last season, if we're being honest, alongside Tim Ream. I think Ream played very, very well. Bert Leno very well, of course. Very well. Tim Ream had a great season last season. I'm actually fancying an Everton win here. I think it's going to be a sneaky 1-0. So I think Fulham are going to struggle with everything that's been going on, with the players that they have missing, with the players that are going to be unavailable. I think Everton could smell an opportunity here to get 3 points on the board. And they've still got a pretty good first 11, to be honest, out there for Everton, stronger than Fulham's, and they're at home. So I think a 1-0.
Yeah,
I don't think the score is going up on our.
I think they'll nick it though. I think Fulham will win 2-1. I think it'll be a tight game. I think it'll be a late goal or a penalty or something like that. But I think Fulham will just nick it. Also, just a point to point out, Everton have been involved in their own set of controversy this week. Are associated rather than being involved, I should say. So they've been chasing Willy Gnonto from Leeds for quite a while now. It escalated during the week. Willy Gnonto removed himself from the Leeds United squad to place Shrewsbury, said he was unavailable to play because of the interest from Everton and didn't want to become cup-tied.
Yeah.
He has withdrawn from the squad for this weekend's game against Birmingham as well. Looks like he's trying to force him to move. Leeds came out with a statement yesterday about the player saying that the player has refused to play twice now, is in a breach of contract. The player, they are now handling it as an internal disciplinary issue. And Leeds have also made a statement on it saying that as far as they're concerned, going forward, Willie Gnonto is not for sale. End of story. But Everton are very keen on him. They are the only team that have actually put an official bid for the player in. The issue that I would have for Everton is the agent of Willie Gnonto is the same agent as Nicolo Zaniolo, who played for Roma last year. And in January, he did the exact same thing. The player went on strike to force a move. Roma basically removed him from their squad. Eventually, at the end, they loaned him out to Galatasaray just to get him out of the camp. And they're selling him. They probably think Aston Villa are interested in buying him. Talented player, but a bad agent. And Willie Gnonto, who's a 19-year-old kid, seems to be getting incredibly bad advice from an agent who's doing the exact same thing with him that he did with Zaniolo. Not a smart move. Doesn't look good. You know, the fact that it's happened a couple of times.
Leeds could be passing Everton as one goes into one league and one goes into the other. That could easily happen as well. So careful what you wish for. At the very
minimum, he's going into a relegation battle straight away again with a club. So it's back-to-back relegation battles. I said this a couple of weeks ago. He's a very good player. He's a bag of talent. He's got 1 goal and 1 assist in his last 19 games as an attacker. It's not great. That's what you're getting. Very good skill levels. However, does have a bit of an attitude when he gets substituted in games, doesn't like sitting on the bench. You know, we saw it last week at Leeds. He was doing very well. The 85th minute, I think they took him off and he ignored one of the players' high fives and brushed past the manager. Like, it's 5 minutes left in the game, pal. You know, games. And then Leeds went and scored after he came off and they won. They drew the game. So he's got a bit of an attitude, which is causing them problems. But Leeds seem to be digging in on this and going, no, you can sit in the reserves for the rest of the season if you want. You've got a 4-year contract. There's no release clause. You signed it in good faith. You know, and I'm okay with that. Same with Mitrovic.
I mean, there needs to be a level of respect brought back to what a contract actually means. So it does work both ways. So it's, I get it. Short careers, people want to get the best move possible when they get it. But, you know, club takes risks on players and players take risks on clubs, and
they do,
contracts need to be honored. But it's a short career. I can get why people get itchy feet, but it needs to be done with a little bit of maturity and a little bit of honesty, to be honest.
I get that as well. And I look at him as a kid and go, he's a 19-year-old. I wasn't making very big life decisions at 19 years of age. I couldn't.
Very good decisions.
Most bad decisions at 19. Yeah. So when someone turns around and goes, well, you could have 1.7 million a year if you want, you're like, do I say no to that? He's 19. I think he's jumping at the first offer that's been put in front of him. I think if he was a bit cleverer, hasn't done things the way he did it, he could have sat this out until the deadline day and got a really good move then when somebody needed somebody. Things could change in the Premier League.
The championship for 12 months and get a move to a mid-table team. You know, correct, smash it up in the championship like Mitrovic. I mean, he had a great career in the Premiership, dropped down into the championship, stayed there, ripped the place apart, and then came up a hero and was being subjected to all sorts of moves. And now he's getting his big money move to Saudi. And if he didn't go to Saudi, I mean, I'd have him at United. As a backup striker until this Højlund fella gets himself fit. But sometimes patience pays off, but it's very difficult, especially for a 19-year-old.
I get that. Yeah, I do get that. Moving on then, let's talk about Sheffield United, newly promoted Sheffield United against Roy Hodgson's Crystal Palace. Obviously, there's question marks around the future of Michael Elise at Crystal Palace. I would still expect him to be involved in this game. I would still expect him to play. Yeah. Although not being predicted by live score, but I would expect him to play. Injury-wise from Palace, nothing major, small stuff. Doucouré has a groin injury. Michael Olise has a thigh problem, but it's unknown how serious that is. And outside of that, no major first-team players. You look at Sheffield United, they've got some issues with Ollie McBurney. He's a knock coming into the game. He might not be available for them, but again, they'll find out. John Fleck has a leg injury as well. But again, outside of that, nothing major for Sheffield United. It's newly promoted side versus Premier League stalwarts, mid-table.
In the ascendancy. I mean, they were relegation fodder for a large part of the season last season, Palace, and they just took off under good old Roy. And I hope that continues. I mean, I like Palace. I think they're a well-run club. They've got some decent players. Are they going to miss Zaha as much as people think they will, or as much as they would have maybe 2 or 3 years ago? I don't think so. I really don't. I think between Olise and Eze, I think they've got enough firepower. Edwards hopefully continues to develop. He has to lead the line. I think Palace will be fine this year. I think they're going to be fine. They're going to be, around the kind of 9th to 13th kind of area. But I think it's a gift of a first fixture for Mr. Roy Hodgson and that Palace team. So I think it's going to be probably 1 or 2-0. I'm going to lean towards 2-0 because I love Eberechi Eze, and I think he's gonna get at least 1 goal today. So I'm thinking 2-0 Palace and kickstart their campaign with 3 points for sure.
I may have missed this. I could be completely wrong here, and I need to probably check it. But I'm looking at live score, and number 11 that they're predicting up front for Sheffield United is Benny Adama Traore.
Yes, I see that at 2. I see that at 2.
Adama?
I see that too. That greasy arms.
That's what I'm checking it out now because I'm not 100% sure.
There is also a Koulibaly who's injured for
Benny. That's throwing me off.
For Sheffield United, but it's Koulibaly with a C. Benny Adama Traore, is it another? I've never seen him called Benny Adama Traore.
Yeah, not the same one. This is Benny Adama Traore, he's an Ivorian striker who's come in from, it looks like one of the Greek teams, BK
Right,
Hacken.
okay.
So that's
okay.
greasy
arms similar name. Gone to Sheffield United, no?
It was the number. When I saw number 11, I went, it's hardly the same as Traore, is it? Especially when it's Adama Traore, but the first one Benny throws that off. So yeah. So
I think Sheffield United are going to have a pretty rough season. Based on what they've been doing in the transfer market or not been doing, I think, they're just going to enjoy the year ahead. Maybe give some Premier League experience, put some players in the shop window maybe, and comfortably and safely guide themselves back into the Championship without putting themselves into too much trouble, and then getting themselves back in there, which I think is the smart move. So they're going to enjoy the year ahead, but I think the writing's on the wall for themselves and Luton, and it's a 4-way tie, I think, for that third relegation spot. With a few other teams, I think, jostling for it. Some Premiership stalwarts and obviously Burnley, who've just come up as well. But I think Burnley are going to do okay.
They have brought in a player this week, Sheffield United, that I rate very, very highly. And they've probably taken the best central attacking midfielder out of the Championship in Gustavo Hamer, who signed for them yesterday. Strong link with a lot of Premier League clubs and a lot of Championship clubs were interested in him. Had a cracking season last season with Coventry up front with Victor Gyökeres, who went off to
Coventry nearly came up, didn't they?
Say again?
Didn't Coventry nearly come up? Didn't they?
Yeah, they got beat in the playoff. They got beat in the playoff final, but they got beat by Luton. But they did a really good season. Did some really good players. Yeah. Victor Gyökeres was just scored goals for fun, and then you Gus Hamer behind him, with just incredible creative force as well. Scores goals and gets assists as well. So he could be a surprise package in the Premier League as well, and he could change it. I'm a little less skeptical. It's a little less skeptical than I was with Sheffield United's Premier League survival. I think they might be okay now with that kind of a buy. Depending on what they do, I still think Luton are in trouble. I think there's other clubs down there that are in trouble as well. So we'll have to. There's some financial fair play stuff to come out over the next couple of weeks, because Chelsea have obviously been referred and Everton have been referred to independent commissions now for financial fair play. So there could be points deductions there as well. So more stuff to come when that happens in October. But moving on to Newcastle United, who had a very good summer.
I'm super excited for this game.
Let's go back one. Prediction.
Sheffield United Palace. I think it's going to be 1-0 Palace.
Yeah, I'm going to go the exact same. I think you're dead right.
1-0 Palace. Yeah, I think it'll be an efficient performance. Yeah, but I cannot wait for Newcastle Villa.
Two teams who have been very busy in the transfer market. Two teams that have brought in, as far as I'm concerned, some serious quality. I expect Aston Villa to do big things this year when that team clicks. I expect Newcastle to do big things this year as well.
Yeah.
When you look at, from an injury perspective, look at the game, Aston Villa, not a huge amount. Buendia is probably going to miss the game with a knee injury. That was
big miss for them. I know a lot of Villa fans quite upset that their boy Buendia is missing.
Jacob Ramsey's out as well, but there's rumors that he's possibly leaving the club as well. Alex Moreno is also listed, but you are looking at a Villa team that could have Moussa Dembele, Boubacar Kamara, Pau Torres in their lineup straight away. That's what they already had last season.
Diaby.
Diaby's exciting.
Yeah. I mean, Kamara, Luis, McGinn. I think this is a serious team. Is it top 4? Bit too early for them. It's certainly top 6. But when you look at their form last year, when Emery took over, I think Villa were third in the league.
When in the games that he managed them for, their form guide under Emery was third in the league.
Yeah.
And then if you look at where they were when he took them over, they were third or fourth bottom of the table.
Yeah. So I think had they started the league from when Emery came in, Villa would have finished third, which is very, very impressive. Now, there's an element of new manager bounce there as well. But, I mean, to be fair, that's a seriously impressive improvement. But this was at a time when Liverpool, Spurs and Chelsea had basically imploded and decided that they didn't want any part of a top four race, despite Liverpool's kind of late surge towards the end of the season. So this idea of Newcastle and Villa kind of replicating the form of last year and kind of coasting into the top six conversation quite easily, and then, possibly taking one of those spots in the top four, I think has given a little bit more confidence than it should, because we've got two or three teams that were in absentia last year that are very much back in the fold this year, which is going to make things a little bit more difficult for Villa and Newcastle, despite their new signings. People that weren't really doing what they should have been last year are going to be back with a vengeance this year, and that's going to be a very different set of circumstances for these teams to deal with. However, I'm very, very excited to see what these teams are going to do against each other, because I think it's going to be a cracking game. I really do. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, same. I love the Newcastle team. Also, just a quick one, Sky Sports. So the Premier League website, the official Premier League website of the Premier League, update your graphics. That badge doesn't exist anymore. They have a new
good shout. Good eye.
Sort your graphics out, lads. I'm again, I think you're going to get two very attacking, exciting football sides here. I'm looking forward to watching both of them this year. It's terrible that my team is in the Championship. My brother's team is Aston Villa, so I have to listen to that. But I can deal with it. They're not a club I dislike. I think they've got some really good players in there as well. I think you'll see Leon Bailey step up again this year. He stepped up a little bit last year. Again, something we've talked about. Coming from Leverkusen, where he did really well, from the Bundesliga into the Premier League, didn't really hit the same heights. Had a lot of injury problems his first season last year. Definitely started to get better under Emery. So I think they're looking at a new player there this year. You've got a very exciting looking Newcastle side with Harvey Barnes, who will get goals even off the bench. He's a goal getter from wide areas. You got Sandro Tonali coming in there. You got Newcastle have built their midfield up really, really well. From a backline perspective, they're one of the best defenses in the league last season. So no need to do anything with that. And then if you can get the same you got last year from Almiron, Wilson, and Joelinton, I think they've done some smart, steady boys this year that will add serious quality and give them quality off the bench. Injury-wise, they're missing Shared, they're missing Willock possibly today. Possibly, I keep saying possibly because the squads haven't been confirmed just yet. But yeah, then they signed Livramento as well.
Livramento from Southampton.
Yeah, now he does have an ankle issue. Very good fullback. He's going to get better and better and better and better as a right back.
I think that's what that means for Dan Burn. I don't see Dan Burn getting ahead of Botman or Schär or even Lascelles, which is a shame because I think Dan Burn did very well. Does Livramento come in to take over from Dan Burn?
This is the interesting one because he's the other side of the pitch. He should be a right back, but Dan Burn plays left back. We look at Kieran Trippier then going, well, they're not dropping Trippier anytime soon because just from delivery from set pieces, the goals they get from Trippier, he's not coming out of that team. He's established. He's the captain of the team. He's
Livramento there to be on the bench.
Could be a backup option, or they've obviously they got European football this year as well, so they're gonna have to rotate that squad a lot more than they had to. So, but he could very easily go in at left back again. There's a lot of teams this year playing with inverted fullbacks.
That's what I'm thinking. There's a lot of inverted stuff going on. I mean, the fact that fullbacks aren't hugging the touchline the way they used to be and overlapping with traditional right wingers. There's a lot of coming inside. I mean, that's what Trent is going to be doing. He's going to be coming straight into midfield diagonally 45 degrees and joining that midfield to create a box midfield. I mean, this idea of going up the bylines now is gone. So inverted fullbacks, I think Anthony starts on the right for United and he's a left-footed player. So this inversion seems to be very fashionable at the moment. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Livramento, who is a specialist fullback, coming in for Dan Burn, who is not a specialist fullback, but did very well last year and I think kind of deserves to probably keep his place, but time will tell.
We shouldn't have doubted Eddie Nketiah. Arsenal 2-0 up against Nottingham Forest. The first goal of the season and their first goal of their campaign scored by Nketiah. assisted by Gabriel Martinelli. And then the second goal in that game, 2-0 to Arsenal. Bukayo Saka gets that one with William Saliba, the assist as well. Like,
Saka with a goal and Saliba. Thank God I swapped out Gabriel for Saliba yesterday. So that's nice. Have an assist and a goal there. That'll do. I'm happy enough with that. That's all right.
I'm pretty sure I had an argument myself about having Saka or not having Saka, or having Martinelli or not having Martinelli, and I actually decided to go with none of them. And
I was going to say you went with both, and you went with none. So you've got rid of Rashford, Martinelli, and Saka. You lunatic!
I'm regretting my wild card next week. Wild card early. Anyway, yeah, this is going to be a cracking match between these two teams. The inverted team is huge. I've seen a lot of right backs and left backs swap sides, because if the wingers are hugging the touchline and making the attacking side of the field as wide as they can possibly make it in order to stretch defenses and make space, then the inverted players are not going onto the left. The left foot is not going onto his left foot. He's coming inside onto his right foot. So it's just as good to have a right footer there as well. So it may work perfectly if Eddie Howe decides to go with that. This will be a tougher one to call, though, Rowan. So
very tough. I think I'm going to go 2-1 Newcastle. I think Newcastle will just have enough. I think it's a slightly more exciting 11 than Villa's. I still think there's a tad bit more quality in Newcastle's 11 than Villa, but not by much. So, yeah, 2-1 Newcastle, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2-2 either. Either way, I think there's goals. I really do. I think both teams are going to be going out with a lot of intent to kind of put a marker down to the rest of the league and to those that are going to be their closest rivals. I mean, this Newcastle-Villa game, these guys are going to be choking each other all season. So I can't wait, but 2-1 Newcastle.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know.
It's so difficult.
Because Newcastle, I think, will have home advantage.
Yeah.
You know, they do stick the away fans up in the gods at St. James's Park, so they can't be heard. I'm going to go 2-2. I'm going to sit on the fence.
Good man. I think 2-2 is a good shout. I was about to say 2-2, but I have too many draws in my predictions today, so I decided to pick a winner. But 2-2, I think, not a bad shout.
I think Newcastle have more firepower than Villa all around the park, but I think if Villa can get Watkins hitting the ground running, if he can find the form he finished the season with to start the new season, I think they could win. They could win it alternatively.
That's an Achilles heel for Villa as well. I think they need more cover for Watkins at the level that he can perform. Because I think if Watkins gets injured, they could be in trouble. I know there's other players that can slot in there, but Ollie Watkins was huge for them last season, and Unai Emery owes a lot to Watkins' goals towards the end of last season. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Exciting game. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, really, really good. Moving on to tomorrow's games, then we start tomorrow with Brentford, who again have established themselves as a steady mid-table, just top half side in the Premier League, against the ever flaunting Spurs with the top six, and whether they're ever going to win something or just miss out. This big problem for Spurs this week is the loss of Harry Kane, who's now going to sign a contract till 2027 at Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
Didn't look like it was going to happen, then it did. He doesn't look like the most happy man in the world to be signing with Bayern Munich. He doesn't really
I don't
strike
understand.
me as a player.
I mean, it's not like he was forced to go. I mean, all the cards were in his hand. I mean, is it yet another case of his brother just securing a terrible deal for him? I mean, I personally, none of that move makes sense to me. I think it's crazy that he didn't want to, beat the Premiership scoring record. People say it's not that important. He wants trophies. Alan Shearer was asked days ago, what meant more to you, the Premier League trophy with Blackburn or the all-time Premier League goal scoring record? And his simple response was, my job is to score goals.
Yeah. Kind
of a cryptic response, but I think it's quite obvious in what it says that I think he very much loves being top dog in the Premier League. Now, obviously, trophies are very important, but moving to Munich, I think, doesn't really do a whole lot for his trophy cabinet. He's going to have a bunch of Bundesligas, which to me are the same as a League One at this stage. They have a shout at the Champions League, sure. But I don't know. None of it makes sense to me. Like the money involved, the timing of it, everything. I think it's a crazy move for Spurs. I think it's a bad move for Harry Kane, if I'm being honest.
It's a strange one. He could win his first trophy this weekend with Munich in the Super Cup straight away over in Germany, so he could go and do that straight. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I do think there's a point in the player's career to like, I'd like a couple of medals to show for this. I've got all the money, I've got the houses, I've got the cars, I've got the wealth, I've got the future. You know, I would like a couple of medals. The scoring record is the one for me that I completely agree with you on, because he's so close to breaking that. Like he will, if he stays in the Premier League, he breaks.
Absolutely inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable if he stays in England. He breaks.
And I think Haaland won't stay in the Premier League long enough to break it.
God, no. Absolutely.
So it's his for a good long time, essentially, ahead. You know, I think Alan Shearer is probably very relieved that he is moving off now, because he gets to keep his record for a bit longer.
For sure. But I mean, it's one of these things where you've already burned 6 years at Spurs, right? You've already wasted this amount of time. You finally got yourself into a hugely advantageous position to negotiate with Spurs if you were going to stay, which he never was going to, or to get a huge pay packet to join a giant of English football, still get medals, whether they're cup medals, league medals, Champions League medals. English teams do phenomenally well. He was never going to move to Chelsea. He was never going to move to Arsenal. So the only conceivable team that he could move to was United. Was he willing to wait a year and then join a United team? I don't know. Maybe he thinks City and Liverpool maybe still have a little bit too much for United. I don't know. But going to Munich to win a bunch of Bundesligas and, you know, get knocked out in the quarterfinal or semi-final of the Champions League. I personally think Lewandowski wasted his career in Germany, despite being robbed of a Ballon d'Or a couple of years ago. I mean, does 7 or 8 titles excite anyone? Not really. He did win a Champions League back in 2019-20, I think, with Munich, which is great. But the best players should play in the best leagues, and Germany is not a tier 1 league. So I think it's a real waste of talent. I think it's a real shame. I'm sorry to lose Harry Kane from the league. Haaland's going to have a procession to top scorer unless Salah just turns it on for what I believe will be his final year at Liverpool. But yeah, a sad transfer. I'm sorry to see him go, and I'm very, very annoyed that he's not going to be pulling on a United shirt.
Yeah, because it did look like this could go all the way down to deadline day.
Match made in heaven. And it's a shame.
Daniel Levy made some comments in his statement about him today where he said that the club looked at multiple different ways to keep him at the club, including short-term options for a season and then longer-term options, but the player decided he wanted to make the move. We talked about his brother before. He's got one client. His brother's got, you know, I saw... I decided to have an argument with Fabrizio Romano a couple of times this week on Twitter. He put a tweet out about Harry Kane has spoke to his representatives, and I went, you mean he texted his brother?
He texted his bro.
Yeah.
Over Sunday dinner.
Let's just bring this down a notch. Yeah. You're not talking about a big conglomerate of agencies here. It's just his
brother. Munich. Yeah. Go, man. It's great. I'm going to get 20 million quid for an agency fee. Oh, great. I'll pack your bags.
Fine. That's it. You're making me rich as well. So thank you very much for that. Injuries coming into the game. Spurs have a couple. Nothing major. Brian Gill hasn't really played, so that's not a big deal for them as well. Fraser Foster's got an injury. Hugo Lloris has a groin injury. So goalkeeping perspective wise for Spurs, you could be looking at Vicario playing in goal, possibly. But then again,
I think it's guaranteed it's going to be Vicario that's playing in their third goalkeeper. So that's why they have him, folks. That's why they have those third choice goalkeepers.
And then Bele's got a knock as well, and Ryan Sessegnon's got a bank. Rodrigo Bentancur has a knee injury, but again, these are all just predicted that they'll miss it. They're not guaranteed that they'll miss it. You've got then Brentford injury-wise, nothing major. Christian Norgard probably the standard one, and obviously Ivan Toney is suspended for I think 6 more months before he gets to come back.
January, he's back in January. Yeah, back in January.
Back in January after the window. So, yeah, Spurs will probably go with Richarlison up front. We didn't score a goal in the entirety of last season. I think they'd be mad. I think they should put Sonny up front and put James Maddison, who, by the way, James Maddison has decided to break a trend that the Premier League has that I like, which is normal, common sense squad numbers.
What's
not Germany. He's gone for 71.
Ugh, gross. What a gross number. 11. What's the thinking? Is there a reason?
I think it looks like 11 on the shirt, maybe, or it's 8. 7 plus 1 is 8.
Stop. That's awful.
71. It's ridiculous. Awful. Actually, they've got another player as well. Udogie is wearing 73 as well. So
I expected under 21's right back to have the letters, the number 71 on their back. That's an
or
odd one.
or some player in Italy, where they've all got mental numbers, like Charles de
Numbers,
Ketelaere, AC Milan wears number 90, like, so it's the crazy. But I've never seen the Premier League, but there you go.
Strange.
Not a massive summer for Brentford, really. Not a huge amount of work done. They've got Wiese and Mbeumo, who'll probably be their attackers, and Damsgaard will play in midfield, but it's it's a steady, decent one. They'll change the back a little bit. Ben Mee will play, and then they've got Pinnock as an option at centre back as well, but they have brought in players there as well to replace Pontus Janssen leaving. So, although Janssen didn't play a lot of games last season, what do you think on this one?
Centre back isn't playing, that young lad from Germany.
No,
I thought he played. So obviously they're, what was it? Van den Ven, wasn't it? Van den Ven?
Van der Veel, isn't it? Van der Veel, yeah.
No, it's Van den Ven. Van den Ven. The guy that came from Wolfsburg.
Yeah, might play. But yeah, very, very much could play, but it just based off what we're looking at right now, he's not included, but he probably will be included tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think Brentford are going to have a tough season this season. They've had a 15 to 20 goal a season striker playing for them, which has been able to. They've been quite solid defensively, but we've seen Sheffield United's, we've seen Swansea's, we've seen Blackpool's, we've seen all sorts of clubs come up and do pretty steady work for a couple of seasons and look like, okay, they could actually end up staying here, and then they just fall apart and just trickle down the league and end up in the Championship and worse in some instances. So Brentford, I think, are far from being the reliable Brentford they were last season. Hopefully Ben Mee and these guys will be able to see, when you've got Ivan Toney up front, it distracts teams and they're always wary of that threat, and it's just going to take a few miles per hour off the accelerator pedal from those teams that are looking to attack. With Ivan Toney gone, I think people are going to be on the front foot a little bit more with Brentford. I think they're going to be under a lot more pressure this season than they were last season. They're going to miss his goals. I thought Mbeumo did very well as well last season. I think he could really step in and fill those shoes. But I do think it's going to be a 1-0 win for Spurs. I think Spurs are coming into this season very excited with Ange, despite having lost Kane. But I think they've got enough firepower up front with Maddison, Son, even Richarlison, and who have they got as well? Kulusevski, a great purchase, a great player. I think he's a very valuable addition. He's going to start all the time now, particularly with Kane gone. I would personally have Son up front, like you said. But let's see. But I think they've got too much firepower for Brentford. I think it's going to be at least 1-0, but I'm going to leave it as a safe 1-0 for Spurs.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to go for 2-0 just because I think I want to see more goals. So I'm going to say 2-0. But I think the same reason. I just think Brentford are lacking firepower. I think that'll be a problem for them until January. I think I think they're probably gambling if they're going to wait till January to see where they are. Yeah, it might be a mistake. But a massive game then on Sunday, the Super Sunday game, 4:30. Chelsea versus Liverpool. Sorry, I'm looking at Arsenal scoreline here. Chelsea versus Liverpool. Two very changed sides. A whole new midfield for Liverpool potentially. You're looking at Chelsea side who brought in a ton of players. However, their big summer attacking signing, Christopher Nkunku, is out for what could be most of the season. With an MCL and meniscus injury, which is a nasty one to get. It's not a full ACL, which he's lucky with, but it's still an MCL.
Outrageous.
So the medial crucial ligament. Crucial ligament injury. Yeah, Broja, who has been out on loan a couple of times at a couple of clubs that they've had as well.
Has been out stuff like that. I don't think
he's very well. He's out with a crucial injury as well, so they're missing a striker there. Nicholas Jackson will probably start, and he's had a good preseason for Chelsea. He's a really, really strong player preseason for him. I was skeptical about the level what he could do, but he's had a really, really good preseason. Wesley Fofana also with a crucial knee ligament, a lot of crucial knee ligament injuries. You want to look at the training for that. That's always players getting the exact same injuries. Sometimes it can be related to training or a change training style, which did a lot of last year. So an interesting looking Chelsea team. You do have said you have Mudryk, who is gone to beast mode this year. You've got Nicholas Jackson up front. You have a full season of Enzo Fernandez there, Conor Gallagher in midfield as well. Levi Colwill could actually play in this game. He's been in and around the squad over pre-season. He's done pretty well.
Huge noise about that kid. There's a lot of noise about that kid. So Chelsea fans I know super excited about Colwill and what he's going to be doing. He's the superstar of the youth team coming up now and getting his chance. Conor Gallagher, I hope he does really well. Really liked him at Palace. Didn't think he got enough chances and especially in a appalling Chelsea team. I think he got a few more games towards the end of the season. Looks like Raheem Sterling's going to be deployed on the right as an inverted, with Mudryk coming in off the left and Chukwuemeka playing that number 10, and then Jackson up front. I'm curious if Nkunku was fit. I mean, who I assume it was Chukwuemeka that would be dropped, but I mean, you've got Mudryk and Sterling both vying for that left position. I assume Mudryk's going to take it given his price tag, but Sterling is far more seasoned.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see what will go on there with Mudryk. Kind of disappointing. Sterling also, but I think he's got a lot of credit in the bank for what he's done in the league so far. We all know what he can do on a very consistent basis at the very top level. But Nicholas Jackson has a huge weight of expectation on his shoulders, and if things go well and they manage to survive without Nkunku, it could spell trouble for Nkunku at the end of the season, despite his price tag. And hopefully he comes back the same player. It's an awful injury, very, very unlucky. I actually do feel a bit sorry for Chelsea. They're not getting much luck on that front, but interesting. What are your thoughts on this game? Sorry, what you say?
So I was going to take just your thoughts on Liverpool.
I think they've got Curtis Jones coming in. Didn't do amazingly well, but I think there's going to be a lot of stuff up front from Liverpool that Chelsea are going to have to deal with. It's going to be a pretty end-to-end game. I do think Liverpool have the stronger, more experienced starting 11, and I do see a lot of goals here. I'm going to say 2-1 Liverpool. I think Liverpool are gonna edge this. A little bit more experience. I think the momentum from last season is still with them. They had a very good preseason as well. And it looks like Gakpo is going to start and Darwin Núñez potentially on the bench. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't think Gakpo exactly lit it up last season. He's far more versatile than Núñez. It might make that front three a little less predictable when you've got Salah, Gakpo, and I think it might be Jota as opposed to Luis Diaz today. I do like the idea of a very fluid front three where you don't really know. You can't really man mark. So you almost have to zone mark because their players are just moving all over the place. But we'll see what happens. I think Liverpool are going to have a little bit too much for a Chelsea team that I think are still trying to find their feet and still trying to glue all those pieces, the pieces they have left together. So I think they're going to edge it 2-1.
I agree with a lot of that again as well. From a Liverpool perspective, from me, from Chelsea perspective, I don't think Chukwuemeka will play. I really don't. I think he'd be there. He's been around it. He made a huge decision last season to force a move out of Aston Villa for game time. He was getting game time at Aston Villa. He was expected to become a mainstay in that team. Again, another young player who forced a move, got it to Chelsea, and didn't kick a ball all last season. So it's an interesting one for him. I don't think he plays. I think you might see Mudryk come inside a bit more and play more direct through the middle. And as you said, there's a huge amount of pressure on Nicholas Jackson's shoulders now, but he's had a very good preseason. He's done okay with it from a Liverpool perspective.
He's done quite well. Chelsea fans are very excited about this guy.
Yeah, and they should be, because again, coming in, he's a good record in Spain with Villarreal. Coming into the English league, can he do it? The Spanish players tend to adapt probably better to the English style of football than the Bundesliga and Italian players do. They're coming from a very fast-paced league, so
I agree.
I think Gakpo will have a very good season.
Say that again.
I think Gakpo will have a very good season. I think did struggle to find his feet or bang on the money when he first came in. But I think if you look at his form towards the last 5-6 games this season when Liverpool went on that run to get into Europe, I think he was massively important. I think you're bang on the money with the front three rotating. I think it's an incredibly fluid front three. And it gives him huge amounts of options. If you're a fullback, you don't know who's going inside or outside because it keeps changing every couple of minutes. Like Salah's running inside you 1 minute and then the next minute Jota's going outside you, or if it is Núñez or it is Luis, they have to sort that out as well. Where Darwin Núñez becomes the player they thought to, or Luis Diaz becomes the player that he looked like he would be at the start of last season before he got injured.
Got a bad injury, the poor fella.
Yeah, so they've a huge amount of talent in attack. They have a good midfield. Liverpool, I've said it in our season preview. I think they have a very good side. It's just going to be a case for me of how quickly can these players all gel. And again, the likes of Núñez and Luis Diaz coming in, can they find the form they were supposed to have last season?
They need that CDM. These are the two teams chasing the defensive midfielders, the tug of war going on between Lavia and now Caicedo.
This could be a tasty sideline tomorrow. You know, there could be some stuff. We saw it last year with
this game should get Caicedo. They should bring Caicedo in a split kit into the center circle and just have a tug of war. And whoever wins the game today gets Caicedo. That'd be fantastic. I'd love that.
Whoever wins gets Caicedo. Whoever doesn't gets Lavia. There you go. That's how you do it. Yeah, you lose, you got Lavia.
That's awful. Both very, very good players. I think both teams would be very happy to get either one. But there's one is twice the price of the other. So we'll see how that goes. But both of these teams desperately in need of a central defensive midfielder. So we'll see. I think there could be great goals. Both of them missing the exact same type of player that they need to try and shore up that defense. Both defenses a little bit leaky. Both defenses probably a little low in confidence coming off the back of last season. Yeah. A lot of players need to step up. They've got different concerns for different reasons. Chelsea with a lot of injuries. Liverpool in terms of form. Trent didn't have a great season last season. He seems to have found some of his form. Van Dijk, is he going to be able to rediscover his form? Are injuries going to plague him again? Is he going to be able to rediscover that form of 2 or 3 years ago? Who knows? Both have big defensive issues for very different reasons. They're both missing a central defensive midfielder. They've both got players that want to prove a lot in attack. I think that's going to be an absolute barn burner. I can't wait for that game. It's going to be great.
I agree. Actually, on the central defensive midfielder, Chelsea did have one yesterday and it fell through. So they had activated Tyler Adams' release clause at Leeds.
Yes.
So a £20 million deal done. Fabrizio Romano, everyone's saying it was all done and dusted. He has been out. He missed the last 4 games of last season with a hamstring injury, and he's still recovering from that. He's still not training in full training yet with the Leeds squad. And the medical was always going to be an issue. It seems that the Caicedo situation changed the deal. Fabrizio Romano have been saying all week that the Adams signing and the Caicedo signing were both players Chelsea wanted. They didn't want one or the other. It was both of them. Whatever happened yesterday, Adams went in for his medical to finalize the deal. And by the afternoon, the deal was off. Adams returned to Leeds. Some reports, and their unconfirmed reports, came back today to say that basically Chelsea identified in the medical that it would take him another 4 months to recover from the hamstring injury that he has.
January.
Pretty bad here. So on that, they decided now it's a leak from the club. That stuff isn't ever said anymore. So you never hear player has failed the medical anymore because that prevents potential other moves. So they kind of keep that in-house of they'll just say the deal is off, terms couldn't be agreed, but they'll never ever say out loud now failed the medical because that can have a detrimental impact on the player getting another move to another club if that happens. And not every medical, every club is the same. Players have failed medicals at one club and gone to another club and not had an issue. So but it was done and dusted. Now it's not. So they don't have the USMNT captain for this season. Brighton apparently had a look at him as well, but as of right now, no one's touching the player. So it's going to be an interesting one for Chelsea. They do need to get that CDM position sorted out to be really, really comfortable. And they probably need another midfielder as well in there just to bulk up that midfield. They have lost a lot of midfielders this year as well. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm in agreement with you. I think Liverpool win this, and I think Liverpool win it just because I don't know if Chelsea are settled yet. And I think Liverpool win it probably 3-1 because
they're doing well. I mean, Chelsea's preseason has been impressive. Typical Pochettino tactics. He's got these kids absolutely running their arses off. Yeah. And he's got really good, young, hungry, very talented players that are perfect. I think this is a marriage made in heaven. A very young, hungry, coachable Chelsea team with a manager that wants very much of the Van Gaal style. He wants young players that will do what they're told and will run for days. I think this could be a really good marriage, but it's going to take a season or two, I think, for that team to click, gel, and take on what Pochettino wants. But I think he's going to do really, really well at Chelsea. So I think the league needs to look out.
So do I. I agree. I think he'll do very well. I think I have him in top 3 in the predictions, but
yeah,
I could be wildly wrong. But I think they might do really, really well. But I think it'll be a shaky start. And then the final game of this week, heading in on Monday Night Football, your boys, Manchester United at home to Wolverhampton Wanderers, who I think we're both in agreement now after everything that's gone on at Wolves with Lopetegui quitting, Gary O'Neill getting that job. Gary O'Neill saying the other day, I thought it was really interesting. In his interview, he said, well, obviously it's not ideal to, coming in like 4 days to the start of the season. I just kind of felt like saying, clubs aren't throwing offers at you, Gary,
Yeah, it's not ideal. Yeah. Welcome back to the Premier League, Gary. So, take it, enjoy it, and see what you can do. Maybe he's getting his excuses in early.
Yeah, remember last year when you said, when you were involved in Bournemouth, and it was Scott Parker was the manager, and Parker came out with 2 games into the season, said this squad isn't good enough to stay in the Premier League, and they sacked him. You've now had a manager at Wolves who's walked out because of the same reason, and you're doing the exact same job you did at Bournemouth last year. So job is to keep them in the league. I think they're in big trouble, Wolves, and I think they could fall out of Premier League this year. What are your thoughts on Wolves before we get to Manchester United?
They're doomed. They're absolutely doomed. I think they know they're doomed. They don't have the players. They've got a magnifying glass over the club's finances. They've lost an incredibly strong manager whom they almost had no right to have in the first place, and who's now just jumped ship. All their best players have jumped ship. They are a shadow of that team that we saw 2, 3, 4 years ago with this great cohort of Portuguese players. A very tight defense, a goalkeeper that was mean, wasn't letting goals in, and they've just hemorrhaged players, hemorrhaged money, hemorrhaged a manager. They are absolutely doomed. If they stay up, it will be one. If they stay up, Gary O'Neill gets manager of the season. Even if Pep
this is where he's going to earn his next move. This is where he earns his next big move. Like Bournemouth
100%
showed no loyalty in the manager this year. Like he kept them up when they. And again, I would say the same thing about Bournemouth. Looking at that squad that he had, they absolutely should have got relegated last year. Bournemouth. Yeah. Scott Parker said this team isn't good enough to stay in the Premier League. I was like, yeah, it's not. It really isn't. No. Gary O'Neill does a really bang up job, and then Brentford bin him off. Sorry, Bournemouth bin him off to bring in Areola, a more attractive manager. So they've upgraded their girlfriend here. So can he now go to his new boyfriend and see if that will work out? If he does a good job, if he keeps Wolves in the Premier League, outside of what you've said about being manager of the year, his stock as a coach goes through the roof because it's not a manager. He hasn't bought players to stay in the league. He'll have coached the team to stay in the division.
This is pure coaching strategy and acumen that is going to keep them there. And to be honest, I think the English or British management conveyor belt needs a Gary O'Neill to do well here, because with the Graham Potter experiment, Graham Potter was the new shiny thing leading the line for the next wave of potentially good British managers. He's been bombed out of Chelsea. Brighton have gone on to even better things under De Zerbi. Southgate still taking pelters from all around him. There's a real lack of talent in the British management pool. Moyes is being tipped to be the first to get the sack from West Ham. I'd like to see Gary O'Neill do well, but time will tell, and I genuinely think they're doomed. And I think United are going to absolutely eviscerate them tomorrow.
I think it could be a cricket score. I think this could be a thumping.
Yeah, and this is why I didn't captain Haaland. I think with no United are going into the season with no number 9. Martial injured, Højlund still recovering from a small back injury, Weghorst obviously gone. Rashford, Gary Neville spoke to Rashford there a few weeks back, and Rashford made it very clear, my position is on the left. That's the side I want to come in from. I don't want to play down the middle. He made that expressly clear. So the left-hand side is Rashford's. What that means for Garnacho, I don't know, because that is a supremely talented kid who is just as exciting, if not more exciting, for me than Rashford was at the same age. And Rashford came in with a bit of a bang. There's a hunger and an arrogance to Garnacho that is really, really appetizing as a United fan. I think this Garnacho kid he's going to be a superstar. And the big problem for United is keeping him happy, because he also likes to come in from the left. He's not an out-and-out striker. Whether they try and put him out onto the right and invert him, if Anthony doesn't start pulling up his socks. Pellistri is a very exciting wide player for Uruguay. There was talk about him going on loan. I hope to God he doesn't go on loan, because I think Anthony needs more pressure on him than what Sancho is capable of. Sancho was deployed in a false 9 all during pre-season, I think, just to get the rest of the team lined up correctly in anticipation for that striker to be playing. Højlund does play as a false 9. He plays very deep. He comes in from the left a lot. He is not a Haaland that is hanging around the box waiting for balls to be fed into him. Yeah. Hence why Erik ten Hag was playing like that. So I think Sancho is going to be getting a lot of bench time this season with Garnacho, and Antony clearly going to be playing a lot. Starting, I think Pellistri has been very exciting. The main kind of miss for United is Kobbie Mainoo. This was a youth product. He was kept instead of Zidane Iqbal, who was the big, exciting youth player from United last year after their tour. He was sold for less than £1 million. A lot of fans were up in arms about that, and Kobbie Mainoo was kept instead. Kobbie Mainoo had a great preseason. He even started in a midfield three with Casemiro and Fernandes in the game against Dortmund, but unfortunately got injured within about 10 minutes. And his season's going to be cut short, at least for the next 2 or 3 months, which is very, very sad news. But I think United are going to absolutely tear them apart. I think Rashford, hopefully, because I've captained him in Fanto, will get a couple of goals or assists. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what this team does to us tomorrow, because I think they need to bang in at least 2 or 3. If this is a 1-0 win for United, that's not good enough. That would be worrying to me, being at home against this Wolves team. I hope it's 2-3, 4-0, and I expect it to be.
I think you have too much attacking power versus what's going to be a weakened Wolverhampton defence, what they've lost this year as well, goalkeeping position as well.
What I want to see. Sorry, go
ahead. Until Højlund comes in there and you've an. I mean, Martial's injured again. How many seasons are you guys going to start with Martial and injured? You know, he's been prolifically injured for nearly. I actually completely forgot last year he was still at Manchester United until I saw him playing again. I was like, oh God, I forgot he was there.
United fans forget sometimes. They're like, oh yeah, Martial. Probably one of the most frustrating transfers next to Anderson that United have ever had. Anderson was equally at United for the same length of time, had an equal amount of praise heaped on him before and when he joined United, showed massive amounts of promise, dominated games when he was arsed, but perennially injured, bad attitude, just wasn't able to get it to click. The same happening with Martial, but to be honest, he's on the periphery of everyone's mind now. With Garnacho coming in, with Højlund having come in, Pellistri doing really nice things. Even young players like Hugo, who's a youth team player at United, he did very well. Gore, who came in, who's a creative player for United, also did very well. There's a lot of very, very exciting youth players coming through United, and not just good youth that they'll sell, but good youth that could actually start causing problems for other people in that starting 11, and I can't wait. The player that I'm obviously most looking forward to seeing isn't Onana. I was at the Lens game at Old Trafford last week. It was fantastic. All the goals were down the end. I was right beside.
I have a question. I have a question.
Please.
When the ball went over his head from the halfway line, what did you think?
I thought Diego Dalot needs to be strung up and taken to task for that. It was all Dalot's fault. I mean, that is the risk. When you play as high as Onana does, you need to have fullbacks that aren't going to, mess the bed. And Dalot absolutely did that. And to be honest, Dalot did it about 4 times in the space of 20 minutes. That was all Diogo Dalot. But of course, Onana is going to get the headlines because he's the new keeper and he plays high up. And of course, he got robbed. And what does this mean? It means Dalot put him into trouble that he shouldn't have. So I'm not concerned in the slightest. He plays 20 yards outside the D of the box. He's there playing 1-2s with centre halves and wing backs. He's bananas. He's brilliant. I love him. He's going to have about 3 or 4 easy mess up goals, lobs, whether he passes it to an opposing player that he meant to get it to a fullback. It's going to happen, and I'm prepared for it to happen. And so is every other United player. But if we concede 3, 4, 5 of those goals over the course of the season, but we get an extra 10, 15 goals as a result of the long balls he's able to play, the pressure that we're able to maintain through playing that high line and recycling that ball back into those attacking thirds. I'll take 4 or 5 goals or lobs to get that. But the player I'm most interested in seeing is Mason Mount. Didn't have a great preseason. I think he could be one of these players where you don't really notice what he does until he's gone. I don't think he's going to be as creative as Bruno. He's there to do the running. And I think he's there to open up opportunities for Casemiro to get forward when those opportunities present themselves, maybe against weaker teams that aren't going to be as fast on the break. But I think Mount didn't have the best of pre-seasons. He did miss a very open chance against Lens. Shout out to Lens's away fans, by the way. They were incredible during that game. Working class town. They came over in force. They made noise nonstop. I never like to speak ill of my own team, but they put the Stretford end to shame. They were fantastic. So shout out to those Lens fans. But I hope Mason Mount does a lot more than I've seen in preseason, and I hope he kind of cements himself in that midfield three. Otherwise, you could see Kobe Mainoo coming back once he's fit to play alongside Casemiro and Fernandez if Mount doesn't start pulling the socks up. But we'll see, and I'm very curious to see how he progresses throughout the season.
It's a big season for Erik ten Hag as well. He's had his debut season. He's been given his betting in period. A very strong finish to the season for Manchester United as well. He will need to deliver big things this year. Are we talking, from your perspective as a fan, are you looking at going, well, a top 3 finish is acceptable and maybe pick up an FA Cup or a League Cup? That's a good season. Or are you looking a step further going, no, we want top 2 and a challenge for the title and maybe compete in Europe?
I think it's not as black and white as that. I mean, with a resurgent Chelsea and Liverpool, United could conceivably have 82 points and finish 5th. They could. So it's not just about where they finish. I am hoping United finish the season. If they finish the season within 8 points of City, I'll be reasonably happy with that. Where that puts them, I don't know. They could be 4th and be 8 points behind City. Maybe Liverpool and Arsenal push them just a little bit closer. As long as United are hitting the 85 plus points mark, that is title winning points. It just depends. You can play a great round of golf and the other guy just gets a better round. You can still play a great round of golf and not win the tournament. So if that happens with Ten Hag, I'm fine with that. He is a manager that wants to play on all fronts. He doesn't sacrifice cup competitions. He likes his cup competitions, as we saw last year. And that wasn't just because the league was gone. He likes to compete on all fronts. He wants trophies. He wants pots. Now, we know it didn't do much for Van Gaal when he won the FA Cup, but it still does count. I think the League Cup did help Van Gaal, our Ten Hag last season, with crashing out of the Europa League in the fashion that they did. He did have to contend with a lot of injuries, so he did have that to back him up as well. People are confident in Ten Hag. We all like the decisions that he makes. Everyone trusts the decision he makes. The way we got our business done this season was very good. There's a different aura around the club. We're dealing with things in a lot more of a professional manner across the board. You can just see his influence just seeping into every pore of that club, which is fantastic. I think the key for United is their Champions League form. I think if United can get into the quarterfinals, finish within 8 to 10 points of City, and potentially win a cup, I would take that as progress. I would be happy with that. But I think that team is capable of doing more. And funnily enough, I almost think United have a better chance of winning the Champions League than they do the Premier League.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's one. We've seen Chelsea do it when they finished 6th. We've seen other clubs do incredible things. We saw Inter Milan do it last year. We saw AC Milan do it last year. That Ten Hag, he strikes me as a manager that does really well in cups. He loves a cup competition. I think United are still trying to find their feet. They're still lacking a couple of players, maybe a little bit of depth and a little bit of cohesion and understanding between these new players and our new way of playing. I think over a league campaign, those cracks will start to appear. However, within cup competitions, I think teams, something happens to them and they're just able to go on a run and perform on the day. Over 38 league games, I don't think United will have enough to win the league. I still think it's going to be City's to lose, although I still think United are in with an outside chance. But I think United could do well if they get the proper group, if they get a proper run of fixtures going into those knockout rounds. I think United could very well do something quite impressive in the Champions League. And I'd actually hang my hat on the Champions League more than I would a Premier League.
Very interesting.
So
yeah, the gap wasn't huge last year. 75 points last season. They're saying if you get into the 80s, you're doing well. You've
another 10 points on last season. Yeah. I mean, you take those 2 losses at the beginning of the season and a couple of other duff results that we got that we really should have won. Yeah, I think we get into that 85 range. I think if we get 10 extra points than we did last year, a good Champions League run and possibly a League or an FA Cup, that's a really good season. But I'm more focused on how we do in the Champions League and how we're competing with Europe's elite, as opposed to trying to wrestle something away from a City team that basically have their heels so far dug in with this Premier League. Everyone's struggling to get it away from them. Teams that are, all English teams are progressing quite far in the European competition. So in terms of Europe, England are still the Dons. But I think City's grasp on that Premier League, it's a little bit too much to expect Ten Hag to wrestle that from him. So I think the Champions League could be something where he tries and does something very, very impressive, provided we get the right run of games and, maybe a Bayern Munich or Barcelona get City and kick them out of the tournament. I think that could give United a nice run at that Champions League.
Yeah, no slip-ups to Brentford this season for you guys.
Hopefully not. We'll see. We'll see. In terms of this game with Wolves on Monday, I am expecting at least a 3-0. I think it could be 4-0, but I'm gonna reserve and say 3-0. I'm gonna say 3-0 United.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same because I just think Wolves are in trouble. I just think they'll get picked off early, and if they concede an early goal, I think it could be floodgates could open if they concede a goal early. Because as fragile as they probably are right now, if they can get a halfway 0-0 away to Manchester United, it might put a bit of confidence in them. Yeah. But if they take it thumping in the first half, it could be floodgates. And I think Manchester United would look to put a marker down then because of that as well to tell the rest of the league we're pushing this year. It's a big gap. It's a big gap. It's an 11-point gap to close between them. More than 11-point gap. Sorry, actually, it's 14-point gap. So it depends on the start of the season. Depends on things go. We'll see how Haaland and Pep Guardiola's relationship continues to. If it's cracked or if it's growing over the next couple of months, we'll see that as well. And we'll see what Arsenal do. Arsenal still winning 2-0 at the moment as well. Heading into
Julian Alvarez, interestingly, starting yesterday.
The 10.
For City as a 10. I thought that was really interesting. I think it's abundant. Pep has got a different set of problems this season in terms of Alvarez has made it quite clear he does not want to have as few minutes as he did last season. And De Bruyne came off real early. I think he's going to have some real injury worries. I think we may have seen the last of peak De Bruyne. I think he's going to be a player that's going to come in for 2025. I think he's entering Neymar territory. Keep resting him. Those knees are starting to go. Neymar hasn't played more than 25 games, I think, in the last 6 or 7 seasons. He's going to be wrapped in cotton wool for those big games. So I think you could see Alvarez coming in and stepping into De Bruyne's shoes. But he started the game even with De Bruyne there. So I think Foden came in for De Bruyne. But Alvarez is going to get a lot more time this season. I think in anticipation for Haaland eventually leaving in a season or two and Alvarez being the starting striker for City. So we'll see. But a new set of variables, I think, for Pep to contend with this season compared to last season. So I think a new set of problems.
I think he's got a few problems. I didn't think about this until the game yesterday. He made one change in that match, and that was the forced change that he had to make when De Bruyne went off injured.
Yeah.
Outside of that, he left a huge amount of talent just sitting on the bench in the first game of the season. The difference that Guardiola has this year versus last year is these players have now all won something with him. They've all won a Champions League.
They've won everything.
They don't need to stick around anymore. Yeah. So keeping his bench happy, I think, is going to be his biggest problem this year because up until now, he hasn't had to because it's a case of if you want to win a Champions League, you stick with us because we have the best chance of winning it. Spent the most money, the best players.
Yeah.
So even as a fringe player, you're going to pick up a Champions League medal. You may never get that opportunity in your career again. This is your crack at it. You've done it now. You've won it all. Yeah. You've got loads of money in the bank because you've been on huge wages anyway, sitting on the bench. And again, I keep bringing up Calvin Phillips as the option. These players, I don't think will sit on the bench. And if Alvarez has already started conversations saying, I'm not playing as little men as I played last year, that will Phil Foden's career could be over now before he ever gets an established midfield position.
I mean, Jude Bellingham is overtaking him as the darling of young English football, and Foden is just, even with Ilkay Gundogan and Mahrez gone, Alvarez gets his start. Foden still doesn't get in the team. It's like, what's happening here? So I think you could see Foden, maybe getting a move, leaves Manchester City. I don't think there'd be room for him at Liverpool, but I could certainly see Chelsea going in for him. You can see
Liverpool style perfectly. I think he'd be brilliant at Liverpool.
Yeah, they've got a lot of players up in those front positions. But once Salah leaves, maybe they go, okay, maybe Foden could come in and take over if Darwin Núñez continues not to work out. It could be a good move for Foden. He looks Scouse. So he has that look about him. But yeah. So we'll see what happens. But like you said, new set of variables for Pep to contend with. Kyle Walker being given the captaincy, one of the older defenders there. Vardio it didn't get a start yesterday. Does that mean Akanji gets dropped? What does this mean for Rico Lewis? Aymeric Laporte still hasn't got his move. John Stones and Ruben Diaz weren't even on the bench yesterday.
Crazy.
So it's which annoyed a lot of fantasy players yesterday. Fantasy players, and it's a wealth of options. They're great problems to have, but they are still problems that require solutions. So we'll see how he does.
I think they become problems. That's the thing. I think before they were nice problems to have. Now I think they just become problems that you have.
Yeah.
Because again, John Stones had a cracking year. There's a European Championships coming up in 2 years' time. Like the year after this. He's not going to stick around. I'm playing the bench in Mrs. England position, especially if Harry Maguire does go to West Ham and starts playing consistently there and playing well there.
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. Kovacic coming in as well as covering those the defensive positions. John Stones was being deployed as the central defensive midfielder last year, shielding that front four. But with all these new centre halves being signed and Kovacic being brought in, where does that leave Stones? It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one.
But it's one we'll keep an eye on. We'll talk about it a lot more as we go over the course of the season. But it's massive thanks to everyone for watching this. It is live and it's short live, so we haven't got it out properly. It'll be on YouTube directly live from next week because YouTube wouldn't allow us to do it this week, so we'll do it next week.
Yes.
But yeah, we'll have a review show from this during the week and a preview for next week's games earlier in the week so that this stuff is up and out for you all to watch before the games actually kick off, unlike this week. So apologies for that. That's mostly my fault for a stupidly busy week and I've been unable to do things. So, Rowan, massive thanks.
Yes.
Just last thoughts on the whole thing. Just really excited about the start of the Premier League season.
Absolutely dying for this season. I can't wait for these clubs that were struggling last year to come back into the fray and possibly create a top 7 or a top 8. We'll see how Ange does, how he spends spending the Kane money. That's what I'm looking forward to with Spurs. What are they going to do with all this cash?
Well, they have the model. They have the Gareth Bale model. Just don't do what you did then.
Yes.
And you'll be fine. Don't sign a stack of players from Seville that all go back to Seville.
Well, hopefully they sign Anthony Martial to play up front. So I wouldn't mind a nice, cool 20 million from Ange for that. Yeah. But yeah, super excited. I'm hoping it's not going to be a procession for City. And we'll see how things go. Finally, before we go, what is the latest score on Arsenal?
It was 2-0. It is still
2-0.
Still 2-0. 62 minutes gone. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thanks again. Great to join you, Jer. And I will catch up with you soon. And we'll do a review of these matches once they happen.
Yeah, if you like the channel, if you like what we're doing, you can help us out by subscribing and liking the content as well. It'll help us to grow. So we will see you during the week for the review of this weekend's action and the preview for next weekend's sets of games. Rowan, thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy these games. Yeah, see you next week.